Okay, here we go. Continuing on into Esther. We're still in chapter 1 and starting verse 11. So this would be lesson 2 of this series that I'm doing on the book of Esther. Getting back to what was going on, we have a drunken king who is making unwise decisions, maybe not thinking through what he's doing, and also it is affecting his ability to control his emotions and stuff like that. So getting into verse 11, we see that he asks, this is what the king is commanding, to bring Vashti, the queen, before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look upon. Once again, we see where the king is showing his wealth, his power, and now he's wanting to show his beautiful queen to those around him. The other thing that I saw in this is that she's summoned by the king. Vashti is summoned by the king, the most powerful man on earth. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this. So she knows this. She knows how powerful he is, and she's been summoned by him. Verse 12, but the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Once again, his anger and his wrath is being controlled by his drunkenness. We see that there are definitely people when they drink that is the reaction that they have, is they are angry and more short-tempered. I feel like Vashti is kind of a picture of us in this situation. She refused to come. We have free choice whether or not we come to the king or not. And when we make that choice, she felt like she could make that choice and not suffer any consequences by refusing him. And instead we see that the king was very angry, and then on top of it, he's drunk. So let's see how the story plays out with him being angry and drunk, and because of Vashti's decision, what takes place. Verse 13, then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment. Verse 14, and the next unto him was Karshena, Shathar, and Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, and which sat the first in the kingdom. I will have to say that this king did go and request wisdom from his council. He sought out the wisdom of others. And when we're in the heat of the moment, we always need to be careful about the decisions that we make. We don't want to make decisions based off of our emotions and how we feel. And there's a lot of times where I can think, especially in my younger years, where I didn't have the wisdom to not react in the moment. And I still struggle with that. If I'm being honest, it can still be a struggle. A lot of times I do want to react right there in that moment. Hopefully, as I've gotten older, I've gotten better about that. But we don't want to do that. It's not wise to react when your emotions are high, or and my husband has always been good about reminding me of this. We don't want to make a decision right now. We are reeling from what just happened, and we just need to take a minute. We need to stop. We need to seek counsel from other people that are outside of this situation, that aren't as emotionally invested as we are. And I think that is a sign of maturity. That is a sign of wisdom in life, is when you're doing that. So I will have to say, this king impresses me that even in his drunkenness, he had the wisdom to ask for counsel in this situation. So he seeks out the counsel of others, and it was a habit in his life. You see where verse 13 tells us, so was the king's manner. So this was a habit he had created in his life. And I don't know how old he was at this time, but he had only been reigning for 3 years. So he didn't have a huge amount of, experience under his belt. I'm sure he had been trained for this role and everything, but he had made it a habit to ask other people for their counsel. Verse 15, what shall we, I want to say the other thing that stood out to me in verse 14 before we move to 15. The wise men in the king's life held the positions closest in his life. So I feel like this is a really important thing to note. I kind of view, I'm a lot like my dad, and I have a tendency to break down. You that know my dad, he's a very organized person, and we have a tendency to, him and I both have a tendency to think this way. So I hate to put it this way, but I kind of have a tendency to compartmentalize everything in my life. And when it comes to people, I kind of compartmentalize them in these three groups. I view the people in my life as either one, those I'm ministering to, two, those who are mutually ministering to me and I am ministering to them. So it's a two-way street. And then three, those who are my mentors and are providing me wisdom that they have that are farther along in their lives or have been through an experience that maybe I'm going through now, and they can help me walk through that valley because they've been there, and they can give me advice of how to deal with that the right way scripturally and how to stay close to God during that situation. So those are kind of how I break down the people in my life. And that being said, I feel like it's really important to keep the people that are giving wisdom the closest in your life, like the king did in this situation. The people that were giving him wisdom and direction and encouragement, the right direction, maybe not always, but those were the people that he kept within his inner circle. He thought those were the people that would steer him the right direction and help him make the right choices in regards to his kingdom. So I don't know if you can see this in my notes, but I feel like the proper balance is, so here in this circle, I'm in the center, and then the outer circle is with those who are providing wisdom. The next circle is those who are providing mutual wisdom, and I am hopefully being able to minister to them and provide wisdom to them as well. And then on your outer circle should be your ministry. So I don't know if you want to think about that in terms of the people that are in your life, kind of categorizing them. You don't want to spend an abundant amount of time with the people that you're ministering to, because they'll drag you down to where they're at. And hopefully you want to have the opposite effect. You want to drag them up to where you are. So it's something to keep in mind, that you need to balance out your ministry goals with those that are your mentors and those that are helping you to do better for the Lord. And so you need to just, even I try to do that in other areas of my life as well. I'm trying to think of a good example, but people would be a really good way to see that, to view that, is you can kind of see when you've spent time with someone, a lot of time with someone who's maybe not spiritually as strong, it affects you. It affects your where you're at with the Lord, and they're going to rub off on you, and Satan's going to try to use that to drag you down, and you want to make sure that you're not allowing that to happen in your life. So just be aware of that in your own life. Maybe figure out those circles in your life of who's who and where they fall. And I've tried to pass that along. I know it's really helped me. I'm sure at some point my dad actually probably taught me that. I don't remember it, but he's always been good at kind of helping guide me in that area, especially since I'm like him ministry-wise. He's always tried to encourage me to make sure I'm careful about how much time I'm investing in other people, and making sure, one pastor explained it to me this way one time, you're a sponge. And if you are not getting enough in, you don't have anything to give out. If there's no water being put into that sponge, there's nothing to wring out of that sponge. So just be careful of that in your life. Verse 15. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to law, because she hath not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains? Verse 16. And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen hath not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. Going back to types, Vashti, using her free will, her free choice, she didn't think that meant that the king would punish her. She thought she could do what she wanted and that there would be no punishment. And that is not how life is. I think a lot of times Satan tries to get us to believe that lie, and it's not true. When we choose against God, it will come back. God is long suffering. He is patient with us. Sometimes his wrath doesn't come for down the road because he's trying to give us a chance to get it right. But her actions did not just affect her. As we see in verse 16, her actions affected everyone in the kingdom, people that she had not even met. We have to remember that our actions do have an effect, and they can bring about bad things. In this situation, she got the king angry, and there was contempt and wrath, and these princes that were helping the king rule were afraid that it was going to spread throughout the kingdom. When they found out that Vashti, the queen of all this area, of all these provinces, could do what she wanted, and that she didn't have to answer to the authority of the country, of the nations. We have to remember that our actions definitely do affect other people. So just keep that in mind. In verse 17, for this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes, when it shall be reported the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. Verse 18, likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes, which have heard of the deed of the queen, thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. Verse 19, if it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. I'm sure you that have been in church know that the law of the Medes and Persians was a law that once it was made, it could not be broken. And we see that in Daniel's life. For those of you who know the story of Daniel, when he was thrown into the lion's den, the reason he was thrown into the lion's den was because that law could not be broken. There was nothing that the king could do about it once he had made that choice, because it was a law of the Medes and Persians. That's something we see throughout scripture. So that's just a little nugget of scripture, I guess, for you. But again, verse 19, back to this type that we see, or that I feel like I see within the book of Esther. God gives unsaved people an opportunity to be saved. That is their free choice, their free will to choose salvation. But at some point, they reject God, and God says, I'm done. And at some point, that rejection has to be addressed. He will address it. Either here on earth, he'll stop giving them opportunities, or once they are at the judgment seat, they'll be judged either way for whether or not they accepted him or rejected his son. And they will miss the opportunity to be in his presence, and lose their estate, their blessings here and in eternity, because of that choice that they made. There won't be an excuse. They will have to bow the knee. They will have to either accept Christ, or he is going to reject them. And that's basically what the king does here. He rejects Vashti out of his life, and she's no longer going to be able to come to him. And then even as Christians, the same can be said with us. When God summons us and tells me that I need to change something or do something different in my life, and I refuse him, he's not going to teach me the next thing until I get that right. So I have the free choice, even as a Christian, to either do what God has said or not. And if I don't, God is going to stop working in my life, as far as he's still going to take care of me because I'm one of his own, but it's going to cause problems for 100% sure. And I am stealing my blessings here on earth and my blessings in heaven, and honestly, peace and contentment and joy. You can't have those things when God has shown you to do something and you haven't done anything with it. So that's another type in there of, she didn't think there were going to be consequences. And we have to remember that the choices we make, there are consequences. You always have to be, I heard somebody explain it this way one time. You have to look you're standing at a river and there's a divide in the river. Which direction in that river are you going to go, depending on the choice that you make. So that's just another thing, a little thing to remember as you are making choices in life. And that is the end of lesson 2. And I hope this has been a blessing to you.